Caan, welcome from Caan.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be back here again at LSE. As you probably know, I've just written in my next book, Start Your Own Business in 7 Days. And what I thought I'd do is I'd take this opportunity today to share with you a little bit about my experience on what inspired me to write the book. The concept of Start Your Own Business in 7 Days was really inspired by my experience at Dragon's Den, where I met nearly 1,000 crazy people who had some of the most incredible ideas that you could ever imagine. And then during the period of Dragon's Den, I'd launched a website called jamesandfox.com, which attracted nearly 1 million people who approached me with, even more crazy ideas. And then recently I launched an app which is called James Caan's Business Secrets, that's had nearly 150,000 downloads of people inspired to look at business ideas. And just taking that wealth of activity and experience, it's given me the opportunity to understand what are the things that make successful entrepreneurs become successful. And what I've done in the book is really taking you through that journey of the things that actually work, the things that don't work, but what are some of the characteristics that I look for when I'm backing people. So what I thought I'd do today is, rather than really focusing heavily on technicals or the book, but actually give you an example to see some of the people that I've actually backed and introduce you to real life entrepreneurs, so you can gauge what is it that makes me back a particular individual, what are the qualities that makes that person successful. And my theme this evening is very much based around not success with a business as an idea, but success actually in business is about the individual. And the one common characteristic that I've met through the entire journey of Dragon's Den and meeting those 1,000 people is, generally speaking, each one of those individuals happen to believe that success lies in their idea. What I'm going to share with you today is actually, it's not the idea that succeeds, but it's the individual. So really what I want you to focus on today is to understand what are those qualities, what are those characteristics that when combined together make something really successful. In my analysis, I tend to focus that the idea represents 10% of success, the execution plan of that idea is 45%, and the individual's passion and drive is the other 45%. And those combination is what makes it successful. So let me just take you through the specific individuals that I'm going to introduce you today. So firstly, what I'd like to do is ask Spike Hughes, Debbie Smith and Faisal Butt to join the stage. So let me give you a reason what made me pick these particular individuals. So firstly, Spike Hughes, on the left, who looks like the chap in Dragon's Den that I replaced. What was his name? The guy with the quiff. Richard Farley. That's Richard Farley lookalike. When I met Spike, Spike approached me with a business idea where he wanted to set up a business in the financial services sector. What I tended to focus on when I met Spike was, here was somebody who had over 10 years experience within the financial services industry, who'd successfully raised over £5 billion through the market to invest directly into funds. The key challenge for me was, here was a guy who was prepared to risk his own capital, be in an industry that he absolutely knew and understood. The risk for me was, could this guy run a business, which he hadn't done before, because working for somebody else, whilst it gives you amazing experience, but does it allow you the expertise to run your own business and take your own risks? Next panelist is Faisal Butt. Faisal was somebody I met who had approached Hamilton Bradshaw with the view that he wanted to build a career in private equity and be an investment manager. Within a very short period of time, I realised that actually Faisal has, bless you, the characteristics of running his own business, very driven, very motivated, and very passionate about his own business. Debbie Smith was somebody who approached me with an idea, who wanted to run a recruitment business in the social services space. Here was a lady who'd actually been there, done it before, worked for somebody, built a business from scratch of over 50 million in revenues, a highly profitable business, and felt that she had reached a point in her career where she was now ready to embark on her own business, was prepared to risk her own capital, work 7 days a week, and put herself in a position where failure was not an option. So 3 very good individuals. But the reason why they're here today is because what I wanted to share with you is every great idea and every great business generally has immense execution risk. Just because you think the idea is good doesn't mean it's going to work. In Spike's particular situation, the minute Spike launched his business, we experienced the worst financial crisis that Spike has ever experienced in his career. All of a sudden, the market that he was about to embark on literally collapsed. Nobody was interested in investing in financial products. In Debbie's case, she already established the business, got the business up and running, literally within a 3-year period, got the business to £20 million turnover, and realised that the government had imposed more aggressive cuts in the public sector that she'd ever experienced before. Her market literally fell out of bed, the margins in her sector literally got squeezed, and all of a sudden she found herself in a position that she could never have imagined when embarking on her business. Faisal had experienced a situation where joining Hamilton Bradshaw didn't actually have an idea as to what business am I going to invest. So like a lot of people in the room, I think I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm very driven, I'm very motivated, but what am I going to do? So Faisal finds himself in a situation with the correct circumstances, but doesn't actually have a business that he wants to launch. So collectively, we need to find a business that's going to suit Faisal. I think they, to me, represent the reality of entrepreneurship. This is not about the get-rich-quick scheme, but what I'm going to share with you is some of the challenges that people face. So from your perspective, Spike, if you can just share a little bit with the audience, some of the challenges that you face, that although the business plan looked great, the numbers look incredibly impressive, but what happened when the ink dried on the shareholders agreement?
Yeah, well, your cheque was obviously cashed.
Clearly.
Probably 24 hours before the market collapsed. So that was good timing. We've had lots of challenges. You know, trying to hire good people is very challenging. Lots of people are good in big companies, and they come into a startup company, and the environment's very different. You haven't got lots of resource around. You haven't got lots of people to help you. You know, when you hire people, you have to say to them, you're giving up all the security that you've got for the 9 to 5 hours, and you have to come and work in a much longer, tougher environment. And you know, when you get it wrong, you just have to go back to the drawing board and hire people again. We had challenges with our distribution strategy. So, you know, when you come to the market, you have to have a product which you have to test. You have to have a strategy, or a distribution strategy in terms of how you're going to sell it. And we actually did a deal with the 9th largest company in the world. So, you know, when I first saw James, he said, "Who's going to sell it?" And I said, "Oh, I'll come back to you." And a few weeks later, I came back and said, "I've actually got a contract from a company 4 times the size of Microsoft that's prepared to JV with us." And so I thought, you know, that was like getting the shelf space from Tesco's. But that particular company went through immense change. Again, within hours of us starting that deal, they restructured their whole business 3 times over the 2-year period. So again, we had to look beyond that. We had to change our pricing model. We had to find new distributors. We launched products that were very, very much in vogue in a bull market, but in a credit crunch, suddenly, you know, we were taking building products in the emerging market region in China and India and other emerging economies. Now, I can place a pretty safe bet over the next 20 years. You'll make a lot more money in those countries than you will in developed markets like the UK and Europe, which we read about, you know, which is where all the problems are. But of course, when there's a panic in global markets, people in the UK that you're selling to don't want to invest outside the UK, even if the UK and Europe's causing all the problems. So suddenly we had to look at changing our products, finding new ways of selling them. If you're not selling them, James was saying you start off with a business plan. If the business plan is you're going to sell so much product every year and make so much money, you suddenly find out when the market collapses that you're not selling anything, or you're selling very little, which means you're burning twice as much cash as you originally thought. So you know, that's quite a painful thing, because all the things you thought you were going to be spending your money on, you suddenly can't anymore. You sit down with James and he says you've got to halve your cost base, and then you need to work out how you're going to do that, which means you're taking a salary cut, your key people are taking a salary cut, and a number of the things that are nice to have you can no longer do. So it's about continually adapting to the changes, I think.
What do you think, Spike, in having experienced that journey, what you originally thought that the journey of an entrepreneur would be, which was the theory and the bright lights versus reality, what do you think are the key things that have enabled you to stay sane during that period? What are the options of failure for you?
Yeah, well, the first thing I did was, before setting up, I had a nice job and had been fairly successful for a few years, made good money, and I gave all of that up. I sold my house, I had a nice motor yacht, I sold that, I had nice cars, I sold that, I cashed in all my savings, and essentially took everything I had in property and toys and savings and put the whole lot into the company. I then persuaded all my friends to do the same. They weren't all selling their houses, but they were all investing a fairly significant part of their wealth into the business. I persuaded James, and so the option for me on failing is one that you can't really, because it means you've got nothing left, and there probably aren't that many places in the world I could hide where my friends and investors collectively couldn't find me. But James said two things to me on day one, both of which were right, both of which were quite annoying at the time actually. The first one was, turned up with this beautifully presented business plan, and he said, there's nothing in there that's going to happen in reality. Your experience will be very, very different, and he was completely right. And the second thing, I can remember, it was the 9th of December 2008 that you said this when you came in and saw the team when we first set up. James said, if it can go wrong, it normally does. And everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. I think the secret is that you need to surround yourself with experienced people, people that have done it in different guises before. And you don't need lots of people around you, but if you've got really successful entrepreneurial people around you, they can give you lots of advice and support. And I think you have to be honest in these situations as well. Most times that I go and see James, I'm explaining why what I said last month hasn't happened, and how we're going to do it differently, and bringing another problem. And James has always given me the support and the confidence and the strategic way of thinking through problems. You don't need to get from A to Z in one go. Let's get from A to D first, and then we'll worry about how we get to the next stage later. And I think everyone needs one or two people that they can draw that energy from, and that kind of coolness and belief. Which I've had from James, and other people get from people that they surround themselves with.
Thank you. Okay, Faisal, you joined essentially, in theory, into a corporate environment, not an entrepreneurial environment. So how did you identify it? Because there's a lot of people out there who are thinking, I'd love to be an entrepreneur, but I don't know, what's the next cat size? What's that next business idea? Talk us through your journey. How did you identify the idea that you think now that kind of position you to become an entrepreneur?
I think my story was a little bit different to Debbie and Spike, in that I came into a corporate, and it was a place at that time, Hamilton Bradshaw, about 2.5 years ago, was a place that was rife with opportunity, but we weren't exploiting all the opportunity that we had coming into us. It was a place where we were largely looking at one sector in terms of entrepreneurs to back in the human capital sectors, but we were getting opportunities from other sectors as well. And for me, I just started to think, James knows and I know I'm not really here to work as an employed person, but we would like to work together and start businesses together. And what I started to pay attention to were business plans that were coming in and teams that I was meeting from one of the sectors that was quite interesting at the time, which was real estate. And this is post Lehman's. Obviously, a lot of people had, there was quite a bit of churn in that market. People had moved on. And what I started to see was that there were talented people, very talented people in fact, and talented teams that had come out of the big real estate companies and had the benefit of hindsight. They knew what had went wrong in the industry, they knew where the opportunities lay, and they were backable teams, and we weren't looking at them. So I just saw that as an opportunity as somebody within HB and grabbed onto the opportunity and really turned that into a business plan that I presented to James. We had a number of Sunday sessions together, just going through it and walking through how it would work, how many entrepreneurs or teams we would back over a 5-year period. And I kind of got the same response from James that Spike did, where this all looks nice, but it's on paper and it's very academic and it's